Some people are born only to become sacrifices for someone else, but a secret buried for years has finally begun to surface. As a fragile bond of trust slowly takes shape, a single choice could change everything. Meanwhile, a dangerous game has already been set in motion behind the scenes, and it all begins. At this very moment, Karl quickly erased every trace of suspicion with a flawless smile before Duke Steward. He claimed that Desa was nothing more than an interesting piece of prey, and sooner or later, he would become Fiosa's meal. Steward smiled with satisfaction before presenting Karl with a special gift. It was a collar, carefully prepared for Karl's favorite prey. The idea made Karl laugh, as though a brand new game had just begun. For a brief moment, the memory of a friend crying out for help flashed through his mind before fading away. Karl calmly accepted the gift, already imagining Desa wearing it. At the same time, deep inside the mine, Desa silently took down a patrol guard and slipped into the man's cloak. He continued deeper into the core, where the atmosphere grew more unsettling with every step. The cries of crows and bats echoed through the cavern as though warning him to turn back. Desa began to suspect that the entire gemstone mine story was nothing more than a massive trap. Just half an hour earlier, everyone entering the mine still believed they might find a fortune, but it did not take long for them to realize they were nothing more than pieces in a deadly game. The cloaked figures coldly repeated the terms of the contract before forcing everyone into the darkness. They declared that only the strong had the right to survive. The weak would become sacrifices for this place. Desa pressed forward, determined to uncover the truth behind the Sherlock family. A thunderous roar suddenly echoed from deep within the cave. Desa rushed toward the sound, unaware that someone had already been watching him. A patrol guard blocked his path and demanded to see his identification badge. Even a moment's hesitation was enough to make the guard suspicious. A sword was immediately raised to Desa's shoulder. Left with no other choice, Desa struck back. The fight had barely begun when the guard suddenly stepped back with a knowing smile. Moments later, an entire swarm of creatures poured out of the darkness. Just as the situation turned critical, a familiar figure suddenly appeared. Karl rushed over, grabbed Desa, and shouted for him to run. Desa froze when he realized Karl was still alive. Karl simply smiled, as though everything had unfolded exactly as he expected. Behind them, Fiosa had already picked up their trail and was closing in fast. Karl desperately urged Desa to leave at once, but Desa refused, determined to uncover the secrets hidden within the mine's core. That decision slowly drained the warmth from Karl's eyes. Unwilling to let Desa face Fiosa, Karl suddenly restrained him from behind. In that single moment, the line between protection and possession became impossible to see. Desa grabbed Karl's arm, forcing him to stop as the monster's roar drew closer. He shouted, demanding to know why Karl would throw himself into danger just to save him. But before Karl could answer, the threat was already upon them. A monstrous howl tore through the tunnel. Without hesitation, Karl wrapped his arms around Desa and sent them both plunging into the river below. Darkness and the freezing current quickly swallowed them whole. Karl struggled desperately as his strength and breath began to fade. Desa realized Karl truly could not swim. Or perhaps it was just another one of his tricks. For a brief moment, he hesitated between saving Karl or letting him disappear beneath the water. Just as Karl seemed ready to give up, Desa turned back against the current. He pulled Karl safely into his arms. Karl opened his eyes, unable to believe Desa had chosen to save him. At last, the two of them broke through the surface. Karl coughed violently before letting out a relieved laugh. He admitted that he had been certain Desa would leave him to die at the bottom of the lake. Desa simply replied that he was only repaying a debt. Their conversation soon shifted to the strange underground chamber they had entered. Karl realized Desa had never stopped being cautious around him, but what worried Karl even more was that Duke Steward would never let Desa go if things continued this way. Karl immediately warned him about the poisonous miasma spreading throughout the entire area. Anyone who breathed it for too long would slowly be destroyed from the inside. Desa suddenly remembered the warning given by the cloaked figures earlier. One by one, the scattered clues began to form a terrifying picture. Desa turned to Karl with a look of deep suspicion. He could not understand how Karl was able to survive in a place no ordinary human could endure. Karl fell silent for several long seconds. Finally, he spoke of an ancient forbidden technique long thought to have vanished the blood infant. Calmly, Karl revealed the blood seal on his body and admitted that he was nothing more than a blood vessel created through that forbidden technique. And then came the most horrifying truth of all. Karl existed for only one purpose: to prolong Duke Steward's life. Karl calmly told Desa about the fate that had been decided for him from the moment he was born. He and Duke Steward had both grown up within the church, but only one of them had ever been meant to keep living. Steward suffered from a blood disease, while Karl was raised to become the perfect sacrifice. His blood, his bone marrow, and even his body existed for one purpose: to keep his older brother alive. Because of the forbidden technique, Karl could heal far faster than an ordinary person. Even the poisonous miasma and most toxins could not bring him down. Desa finally understood how Karl had survived in a place where no one else could. Karl gave a bitter smile, admitting that such power had always come with unpredictable side effects. Desa looked Karl straight in the eyes, trying to tell the difference between the truth and yet another carefully crafted mask. He asked if Karl had come to the island to escape the fate forced upon him. Karl immediately shook his head. His only goal was to save Duke Stewart. To Karl, Stewart was the only person who had ever truly treated him with kindness. That was why he was willing to pay any price to find the King's Stone and cure Stewart's illness. Karl gently took Desa's hand and begged him to keep this secret, but behind that plea came a chilling warning. If the truth ever got out, no one could guarantee Desa would survive. Meanwhile, deep beneath the underground chambers, a massive iron door slowly creaked open. Duke Stewart appeared outside the prison with his familiar, composed smile. Inside, Coleman, Desa's younger brother, remained bound in chains. Stewart casually reminded him that he was the one who had saved Coleman from death. As he examined the wounds covering Coleman's body, he began to suspect that Karl had started to lose his resolve. Just as one of his followers moved to drag Coleman away as food for Fiosa, something unexpected happened. Coleman was still alive, even though his heart should have been pierced. Stewart quickly realized that Coleman's heart was on the right side of his chest. That discovery fascinated him more than ever. Furious, Coleman fought back and exposed the truth that the experiments and the monster rumors were nothing more than a cover for Stewart's plans. But Stewart simply laughed, denying nothing. He deliberately mentioned Karl, saying that Karl had already found a new piece of prey far more interesting than Coleman. Those words brought back the memory of Karl's strange smile, and for the first time, Coleman felt something shift inside his heart. Stewart threw Coleman back onto the cold stone floor before walking away, as though everything was unfolding exactly as he had planned. Before the iron door closed, Stewart left behind one final promise: very soon, all of them would meet again. While the dangers on the island were far from over, something quietly began to change between Karl and Desa. Karl playfully teased Desa, leaving the usually composed man unexpectedly flustered. Desa simply asked Karl to keep his distance. Karl immediately apologized, though the smile never left his face. After a brief silence, Desa revealed his real name for the very first time. Karl froze in surprise, then could not hide the joy on his face. To him, it was a sign that Desa had finally begun to trust him. Without hesitation, Karl offered to become Desa's ally. Desa refused, but agreed to let Karl stay by his side until they escaped the island. Those few words alone were enough to make Karl feel as if he had gotten exactly what he wanted. To repay that trust, Karl took out the collar Duke Stewart had once given him and offered it to Desa. Desa immediately refused, saying it was a meaningful gift from Karl's older brother. Karl lowered his head slightly before revealing the real reason. He trusted Desa more than anyone else he had met on the island. He even admitted without hesitation that he had developed special feelings for him. Desa tried to remain calm, but those words still caught him off guard. Karl reminded him that Desa had turned back to save him from the deadly river. To Karl, that single act meant more than any promise ever could. Even so, Desa still refused to wear the collar. Karl simply smiled, quietly hiding his disappointment. But as Desa looked at Karl, he could not help thinking of Coleman, the younger brother he had never stopped worrying about. In the end, he changed his mind and accepted the gift, though he made no promise to wear it. Desa also reminded Karl not to keep seeing him as a reflection of Duke Stewart. Hearing that only convinced Karl even more that Desa's cold demeanor was nothing but a mask. Together, they continued searching for a way out of the underground labyrinth. After hours of making their way through the darkness, they finally caught sight of daylight. The moment they stepped outside, Desa realized the island was far larger than he had ever imagined. He decided to climb to higher ground, to survey the landscape, and plan their next move. From above, a lighthouse came into view, its rotating beam moving in a strangely unnatural pattern, as if hiding another secret. At that very moment, Karl's voice echoed through the quiet forest, calling Desa's name. Desa stopped in his tracks. It had been a very long time since someone had called his name with such genuine warmth. Are the secrets revealed so far? Really, the whole truth? Or is an even greater conspiracy still waiting to unfold? Share your theories in the comments, and if you enjoyed this recap, do not forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter of the story.